So hey guys, I'm just going to do a quick video on how to adjust your chain to get the right slack in there so that you don't wear out your sprockets or also that counterbalance or shaft. You can put too much tension on there and kind of wear out your bearing behind that shaft, the counterbalancer shaft, the front sprocket shaft. I am going to deviate from the manual. I'm going to go with 26. I'm going to go with the recommendation from a 2016 KTM 250 and 450. Per their manual and per what is actually printed on the back side of their airbox cover, you can look on theirs and see it. Seeing as this bike is a 2016 KTM copy, they recommend between 55 and 58 millimeters of slack or spacing from the back of the chain slider to the swing arm, and I'm going to go with that myself. I think that's the best. I just believe that that's the right one, and I've done that in the past on many bikes or similar bikes, and I believe that gives you enough of your chain's not so tight that you start to wear things out. So I'm going to get right into that work. I did cut a spacer so that to make it easier on myself, you can just cut a piece of wood 55 to 58 millimeters, depending on what you feel is comfortable. I did mine at 55. And you can space that in between the frame and the bottom of the chain in the position right at the end of the slider on the front part of the swing arm. So I'm going to get into it, and you guys, hopefully this is helpful. I got someone in the comments section of a video that asked me to make this, so I'm going to do that for you guys today. So step one in this process is getting a 1.25 inch or 32 millimeter socket and loosening up the big end, the nut on the swing arm. So I use a, oh geez, this thing's on there. Yeah, this is a 1/2 inch drive that I use. So I loosen that up all the way, get it good and loose, and get that off of there. So I don't know if you can see that, but nice and loose, leave it loose. And then we're going to move to the, everything else is probably going to be on the, I'm going to show you from the other side until we come back to tighten this. So for on these Kayos, the chain adjuster, the slide adjuster, both of them on my bike are 14 millimeters. So I've got 2 opening wrenches, and you want to back them off so that you have free play. Oops. Sorry. Get that one going. So just backing off the nut that goes against the frame, the swing arm frame. I backed it up a bit, and I'm loosening by moving the thread. I'm threading it into the swing arm to give myself some space because I had my chain adjusted a little tight. And I'm going to do this on both sides. Give myself some space. It is kind of crazy that they use 2 14s. Normally it's a 13 and a 10. This is the only bike I've ever noticed this with, having 2 14s. But it is what it is. And you've got to work accordingly. When I set up this bike, I put some anti-seize on the threads that go, I had backed this off all the way and put some anti-seize on the threads that go into the swing arm. I hope you can see this, but yeah, they tend to, after a while, kind of seize in there sometimes. Sometimes you can really get a problem when they seize, but these are, right now I'm good. So I have space right now in between, and I've got the bolt loosened up. So now I've got even more slack, and I'm going to just run it up against it. I'm going to use that to run it up against the sliders just to get some more space out of it. But the next thing is I cut this piece of wood to 55 millimeters so that I have the correct amount of slack in the chain. And it goes right here by the mud flap, or right at the very end of the slider. And you can turn it either way, but I prefer to have it just about the width of a link of chain. And then back your chain adjuster out till it's tight. And you'll want to do this evenly on both sides, but I'm doing it right now just to hold the piece of wood, and then I'll come back and measure it. So that's holding the piece of wood in there. And I'm going to do it on the other side. Alright, now coming back to the chain side. Just want it to be as level as you can get it. Tighten that out until it's tight against that piece of wood. Just like that. Yeah, nice and tight. Okay. Now, I use calipers to measure from the back of the swing arm, the indentation, the cutout, to the top of the slider on both sides so that I know that it's even. You can use these little marks, but you know, there's marks on the slider and there's a divot in the swing arm, the top of the swing arm. There's a little divot, and you can use the lines from side to side as a kind of a guide, and that's what I'll do right now, but I find it to be more precise if you use your calipers. And once I get that pretty lined up side to side, then I tighten the axle nut. See, right here to right there. Yeah, on each side right now I have 36 millimeters, so it's pretty dang straight. So I'm just gonna tighten that up a bit on both sides. So I'm just running the lock nut against the swing arm frame and the adjusters all the way against the slider. The next thing I'm doing is I'm going to go back to the big nut. I'm using 1 1/4 inch, but like I said, that equates to 32 millimeters if you're going to use metrics. I didn't have one that big. And I'm going to tighten this up so that it doesn't move. Not too tight, I mean, just going to snug it up. That's the word. All right. And now, just to make sure this is jammed up against so that the slider is against the nuts, I like to put, I don't have one, sorry. I'll use it right here. I'll use a rag. You can use a rag just bundled up in here, in between the frame and the sprocket. And that tightens it up and jams the slider against your locking nuts, your adjusters. And I'm going to lock them up on both sides. And I don't go too tight, just a little bit past snug, and then like a little bit of a turn after that. All right. And then I'm also going to tighten up the axle nut. I like to put the wheel all the way to the ground, tighten it good. It calls for 65 foot-pounds of torque. So if you want to put a torque wrench on it, of course you should do that. I kind of have a good feel for what that is, and I don't bother. But so then I'm going to come back here again with my measured out piece of wood for 55 millimeters. Go right behind the end of the slider, the chain slider, and yeah, that's what I've got. Got that amount of space, which equates to like 3 fingers, which is kind of what the rule of thumb is for KTMs. People have always kind of said that for the KTMs. Right about 2.5, 3 fingers is good. And this is 3 fingers. So it gives me plenty of slack, and it's not too loose. It's the perfect amount. So there you go. For those who were asking, that's a tutorial for how to set your chain slack. And hope it's helpful. Peace out.